morning, everybody, and happy July. We'll go ahead and get started with our webinar series. We're happy that you took some time out of your day to join us today. So today we will be talking about the color blue and all of the types of blue colorants that are available for your application areas. And so as we always do, we'll be recording this session, and all of those in attendance will receive the link to the recording as well as the PDF of the presentation. And if you have any questions along the way, feel free to drop them into the chat box, and I'll address those at the end of the presentation. But if that's not your thing, that's okay. Go ahead and reach out to me directly and with your question. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started on the presentation. So with the blue, so we're obviously being able to provide you with the technical insights into blue, as it is a very important color for all application areas. So when we talk about color, certainly color is important to all of your businesses in there. And so with color, you try to attract attention to the end application. And in some cases, color inspires confidence. Also, there is a brand recognition that always does play a role in selection of color in there. So the big thing to note is that people will always reach past something that may look faded or washed out in terms of color, and their eyes will be drawn to a more fresher one with a brighter color. As far as color is concerned, we are people, so we do things in a lot of ways. And one ways we react to color is from an intellectually based approach, where, for example, we cross the street on a green light, but we wait for the red light. Unless you're in New York City, but okay. And then we also react to them emotionally as well. So in a lot of cases, red can be perceived as more of a warmer color. It denotes energy, joy, passion, etc. Whereas blue, in this case, can be perceived as a cooler color. So people think ice, snow, colder emotions. So there's a lot that goes into the actual color itself. So the blue color space, we talk about that with respect to it being a green shade blue or a red shade blue. There are not as many spaces that fill this area, so this just gives you a feel for where some of the more important color indexes are with respect to color in terms of both organic and inorganic. And mica effect pigments fall into this space as well. So still talking about color and what it does for your business. So from the business side, people use blue to denote a little bit more trustworthy, increasing productivity. A lot of this is a good color for corporate business. We see this a lot, like, for example, in airlines and medical practices for that particular emotion or feeling that you get with a blue color. Colors can affect your mood as well. So the three areas of the blue space: turquoise, pale blue, deep blue, also provide that more relaxing, peaceful, open type of a mood enhancement to your object. And so really, it really comes down to, yes, it's a blue color, but there's a lot behind that blue color, depending on what your end goal would be. And ultimately, your end goal is to sell more of whatever product it is that you're trying to sell. So we talk a lot of different ways about describing blue color, all the way from using words like medium blue, bright blue, muted blue. in here. But what does that mean in terms of the color space? So I translated each of these into the LAB color space just to get a feel for where they fit in terms in translating words into numbers in there, depending on um, what your desire is as far as the description. So these will always again match the color space from green shade to red shade. Red shades are the alpha blues in terms of the CPC blues. The beta blues are going to be on the greener side. So this helps in whether you are more comfortable with word descriptions or color space descriptions. So blue shows up in all spaces in the colorant world, both in pigments and dyes. From a pigment perspective, they are in on the organic side as well as on the inorganic side. So there's a lot of spaces where you can pull a blue color from to be able to meet all of your application needs as well as your color needs. So we've seen this slide in the past. It's a can be a difficult process as far as selecting a colorant for your area. So you're going to always have someone who's doing the design of that particular product, giving you their insights. So they may be the ones that might be using the words to describe a blue color. And then there's the formulator who has to translate those words to the actual formulation and select the correct pigments. And then there's us with the pigment manufacturer. So there's a lot that we can offer to that process because we have the good knowledge and understanding of the actual pigment chemistry and the finishing that goes on that one to be able to help you provide the best options for your both your color needs as well as your technical performance needs. Because in the end, it's only valuable if it meets the customer's needs to be able to get to your end point. So we'll first start out on the organic side in the metal complex area, which is going to be our phthalo blues. So phthalos are range, as I mentioned, from red shade to the green shade. The more key indexes that are in this one are the pigment blue 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. 6 being the epsilon, the most red shade, and the least in volume, more of a nichier product for that one. The 15.1, 15.2 are the red shades or the alphas. Obviously, they're not as red as the other organic blue, the pigment blue 60. And then the betas are the 15.3 and the 15.4 on the green side. They're used in every application area, so it's really not fair for me to point out anyone in particular. They're heavily used, primarily because they're a nice, robust, cost-effective pigment family to be able to use in all your application areas. They bring to the party nice durability, heat stability, overall well-rounded properties to your formulation at a more cost-effective price point. The alpha beta are the other word for it are polymorphism or the crystal modifications. The key here between the alphas and the betas are the distance between the overlap distance between the copper atoms in the crystal. So the alphas are going to be more on top of each other in that matrix in there. So the copper atom in the middle there will line up more on top of each other. And then just the opposite is the betas. They're further apart in that matrix. That distinguishes both the color shade differences and also in some cases it can also relate to some performance aspects, and you'll see that a little later on. So a little bit of a reminder of where these fall in. The 15-1 alpha is, again, it's to the red shade. It's a well-used pigment color spacing in there. Very useful for all application areas. Um, should be noted that all of the CPC blues are not as, they don't perform well in environments that have high acid rain concentrations in there. So if that's an area where you might need to have a formulation a little differently than a straight phthalo blue in there, and I'll have some examples for that a little later. The 15-2 alpha blue, this one is typically used for liquid coatings because the extra finishing steps that are used really do create a more efficiently dispersed pigment. Also a little bit more non-flocculating in a lot of areas with respect to rub out in here, but it's an offering to be able to go into many liquid coating spaces. Shifting to the beta side, again, this is a further apart copper atom in the matrix. These are to the green side, definitely a well-used color index, and you'll see that in a little bit with the amount of products that we have here. It does show up in all application areas as well. Like the alpha 15-2, the beta 15-3 is typically used for coatings applications for the same types of reasons. It provides an easier disperse, very good rheology type of a product because of the extra finishing steps that are used to create them. The 15-4 will be a little bit more to the greener side than the 15-3. So there's a lot of options there that can help fill your space. The key to getting those differences in that crystal structure and the alignment of the copper atom is really upfront in how the crude is handled in there. So the key area for the alphas is taking that crude and then dissolving it in acid and then re-slurring that to precipitate out before the actual pigmentation process starts in there. So that's the key to be able to keeping the alignment closer together to create the alpha polymorphism product. The key here, so this is a more of a visual perspective for that process flow. The crude copper phthalo is the base of that, so you can see they are very large particles. And then once it's dissolved and precipitated out, we see these very fine particles. And then once it proceeds through the final pigmentation step, then you see the long rod-like shape of the final pigment. Little examples of what kind of color spaces you can get to on the plastics area. This 15-1 blue with a iridescent blue mica gives that nice deep color blue in a plastic formulation. Oops. And then the 15 on the coating side of 15-2 blue. Again, I mentioned these are mainly for the liquid coating areas in combination with an iridescent red or pink mica gives that nice deep blue color with that hint of red on the as an accent color. From a color product offerings per spaces, I'll go through these really quickly, but it's obvious to see that there are many options, whether in the powder form or the liquid form in there. So there's a lot of options to be able to fit your needs depending on your color space that you're looking for, as well as the finishing techniques that are used to be able to get there. On the 15.2 side, because they are more geared toward the liquid area, there's lesser number of them, but still enough to be able to fit the needs of the liquid coating side. Switching over to the beta, again, I mentioned that the crystal modification is all done at the very beginning with the crude blue. So unlike the alphas, the betas take that crude blue that was very large, and then they mill it down further to a smaller particle size before that final pigmentation and surface treatment is done to be able to get the ultimate pigment. So going back to that same slide, same crude phthalo is used. After that milling step, you see a lot of coarse but finer, much finer particles that are created during that milling process. And then ultimately at the very end, the pigment crystals still look very similar to the alphas in that rod-like shape. Some color spaces in this one is the 15.3 in combination with a very large glitter-like silver mica gives a nice bright glittery color space to this plastic application area. And on the liquid side, as well as the plastic side. The 15.4 gives that nice deep green, blue shade or green shade blue color space to this area in combination with a couple of CICPs for great IR NIR reflection for those types of applications as well. 15.3, as I mentioned, is a widely used in color index. As you can see, it's so wide that I had to create two charts to be able to give you an example of the options available in both the powder and the liquid side as well. So again, many options to fit your need for your application area as well. And on the blue side, just like on the alphas, the 15.4 being a more coatings developed grade, there's lesser options here as well. So we've talked many times about finishing, and it's no different here in the blue space. Depending on where you're going, we as a manufacturer create the end product for application area. So we do different things for each application area to be able to best optimize that particular pigment in that kind of formulation for the application in here. So not all pigments are created equal, but it's not to say that there isn't crossover between the two. So a statement you've all heard me say many times is my job is to make sure you have the right product for your application, not necessarily one that's selected from that application area, because they will behave differently. And in some cases, those differences might be a benefit to your application. So, for example, in a plastic application space, if we take a look at all the various color spaces for the alpha or for the phthalo blues, we can see that the betas as well as that 15 the epsilon, the 15.6 is very red in there, and also, it's very clear that these are finishing can happen. So in this particular case, these values are averages of a variety of products in here. So I mentioned that the 15.3 is a beta, so it's when you would normally think that it has a more green shade approach in a mass tone. But because there are so many products in here and thus a wider variety of color for the individual products, the average does actually push it to make it look like a more of an alpha blue in color space. From a performance perspective and the aspect of the finishing as well as the modification, this is the filter pressure value in that plastic formulations of all these products. And you can see the variety of products that are there and their performance. So I put up on top there what that product was originally developed for, so that you can get an idea of what the intention was, but also to understand what options are available in there as well. So you can see all of the different modifications and the performance in this particular test method. So in a lot of cases, there might be something that is outside of the application area that still fits the need for that one. A good example is in the 15.3 space, we see one inkjet product that actually does perform, and a couple of coatings products that perform quite well in this particular test method. So there's a lot of options there. In liquid color, same idea here, where we're taking a look at the phthalates in terms of the a deep tint tone, which is a 50-50 blend with TiO2. Here it's a little bit more clear to see the color spaces of the alphas and the betas, as well as that epsilon all the way over to the right side or the red side in there. The other alpha there, the 15-0, is unique in that in this particular formulation, it doesn't disperse as well. So we're not getting as much from a colors perspective as you would see this in other formulations. Other formulations, you would see that all the way over to the red side as well. So not all color indexes are appropriate for all formulations. Again, going back to the finishing impact. So in this particular example is an example of a 15-2, where we took a look at two different drying techniques and that impact on, in this particular slide, I'm showing the strength as well as the tint tone color in there. So we see a variety, we see a difference in how much redness is developed in here, as well as strength. So drying process number 2, which ultimately provides a smaller particle size and a more narrow particle size distribution, does result in a redder shade as well as a higher strength. So if we switch over to the other organic in the polycyclic area, we will find the indanthrone, or better known as the Pigment Blue 60. This is one of those very red shade high performance pigments in there. So it has a lot of unique characteristics from a technical side that make it very important in different application areas. It does have that high durability and high heat stability, and very transparent, so it works very well with effect pigments. So all of those included make it a very all around good pigment in a lot of application areas. I mentioned a few of the unique application technical properties of it. Automotive metallic coatings or effect coatings, because it's transparent. It does provide some nice options to be able to tint black in plastics to get a little bit more of a jetter, deeper black color in there. Does show up for swimming pools because it does have some the bleach resistance that's required, obviously, for a swimming pool. And its high heat stability makes it very useful with respect to engineering plastics that are processed at a higher temperature. From a product offering perspective, this shows up for Sudarshan in the powder form in a number of different application areas. All right, if we switch over on to the inorganic side, we'll start with the CICPs and the cobalt blues. I showed this chart last time with our CICP webinar. In this case, we're just focusing on the two blues. that are in there, the blue 36 and the blue 28 in here. So they both are have the cobalt in there as one of the primary colorants or metals responsible for the color. On the pigment blue 36 side, there's an additional chromium metal in there that also makes it that responsible for the primary color. That's where you're going to get the green shade from there. And then the aluminum, of course, is there for the for balancing all the charges and then modifications as well of the shade. So cobalt blue is a very as I mentioned to the red shade. It all has the same properties as the CICPs in it as a class do. It's well suited for the higher temperature coatings like glazes, and is suited for coloring cement or lime in there. So combination of the two there. And the other part of it, it does also provide a very high opacity if that's something where you need to be, so that you can ultimately potentially lower your pigment loading if you're looking for a more single pigment um, uh, offering. And then it is also provides better warpage and acid rain resistance, as I'll get into, if a phthalo blue does not meet those types of needs. I mentioned about the, with all the metals that are in there and the amount of that balancing aspect of it. Those are the ones, like we talked about in our last month's webinar, is how we can manipulate the end color with those metals in the ultimate formulation. So you can see how varied we can create a pigment blue 28 color just by that manipulation. From a product perspective, it shows up in a variety of both powder and liquid spaces. And then switching to the green side of the cobalt blue is the blue 36. Same types of properties and application areas as this, just the shade is to the green side. And a product perspective, again, shows up both areas with respect to powder and liquid. Still in the inorganic category is the ultramarine blue. These also are known as the pigment blue 29. It's a nice red shade blue in there. We also there's also offerings that are a little bit more to the green side. So it does have, within its own color index, does have a red shade to green shade space in here. So it is a useful tool in everybody's toolbox. It's a lower cost in that inorganic space. It does is very good durability, except for acid environments in there. So that's just one piece of care that has to be taken depending on where your end application area is in there. Got great resistance and high heat stability. It's not as opaque as a blue 28 or a blue, well, in this case, a blue 28 would be the color position alternate in here. So it is more of a semi-opaque type of application area. From a product perspective, both powder and liquid. And lastly, in the inorganic space, I'm sorry, excuse me, is the mica or luster pigments. Two types in here. We have the those that are the interference colors or coated with TiO2. You might know them as the iridescence in here. So in this space, there is a blue. So we've talked in the past that these are defined by the thickness of the TiO2 on the mica. So the blue color space is achieved by that second to thickest area of the TiO2 to generate that blue color space. These don't have great height, they don't have any hiding power. They're iridescent, translucent, but they do provide that nice higher chroma in combination with other pigments. So I mentioned blue 60 or the phthalo blues. These go very well to really intensify that blue color if you combine a blue mica and a blue organic pigment together. Just an example, this is one of the iridescent blues in a clear coat over top of just a TiO2 white base coat in there. So it really provides that nice accent color to whites. The other type is more on the multiple metal oxide coatings. These tend to be more the absorption color spaces because they have a combination of two different layers of metal oxide to be able to create the space in here. So the little graphic over to the right hand side there kind of gives you a feel for how you can create these types of colors, and it all goes into what you choose in the layering process for that one. These types of pigments do offer hiding. They are excellent for durability in there. They're not as intense on the sparkle side because of the extra layering in there, but they do improve the color portfolio space that you can achieve, as well as that durability. So the example here is the Regal Blue. In this particular example, it is the surface treated one with the chrome-free surface treatment for exterior automotive type coatings. It gives that nice opaque smoky blue coloring that is unique. And on the plastic side, the untreated version is available as well to be able to provide that same type of unique color space. From a product perspective, I talked about the two types, the iridescent as well as the multi-layer metal oxide with the Regal Blue. Shifting gears from pigments over to dyes is the other space where blue shows up in here. Acid dyes is one example. And these are typically used for dyeing more natural fibers like silk and wood to be able to get the textiles that we all wear every day in there. And there's an acid blue 2025 in that space. Direct dyes are also used in the textile area, but these are primarily used for dyeing cellulosic materials like cotton, paper in there. They also do show up for hair dyes as well. And then lastly, one of the more better known solvent dyes that are typically used in plastic applications in there. So these are always going to be soluble in the polymers as well as other types of solvent-based area. And these are going to be, they're soluble, so they will dissolve 100% in there so that they are completely transparent. However, it's always good to know how soluble they are in your application area. From a product perspective, listed both here. So there are powder forms as well as liquid forms in the dye area, blue dye area, and a number of different application areas. Some examples of blue and how to work with blue and to get the absolute properties that you're looking for. I talked about at high acid rain regions and how to formulate your formulation colors for those areas. And this is one area here. So we use a test called the fuming nitric acid test, which simulates that pigment's response to acid rain. And the phthalo blues, whether it's a 15, 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 6, they will all perform very poorly in this particular test in here. So you have to be careful in those types of areas. A couple of examples on the liquid coating side, where we introduced the blue 28, the cobalt blue, as an option to improve or remove that particular impact. In the When we remove the TiO2 and replace it with the cobalt blue, we can see a nearly a 50% improvement in that exposure response, and with both the alpha and the beta areas. And if you need to go full out removal of that one, the blue 28 itself by itself provides that response, the technical response for that type of application area. The chart up front just gives you an idea of the color space those combinations do fit. And on the plastic side, similar type of response, except for here is where we see the crystal modification impact um, uh, with respect to this particular test method. So the alphas, we also see a 50% reduction by replacing the TiO2 with the cobalt blue. However, we do not see a much improvement on the beta side for the same response. So just something to consider in your formulation efforts. The second example is dispersant selection for liquid coatings. This example shows the Pigment Blue 15.2 in a solvent-based formulation. And here we're using all the same formulations, the same DDP in solids and pigment level, and we're only looking at dispersant types, the polymer itself, as well as the with and without a synergist. And in this particular chart is the viscosity. So we see some differences in each of these, and ultimately we see the best type of response with these types of formulation. And then the other one, we always try to get the most out of our pigment. And this particular example is those same examples, but we're taking a look at how these can impact tint strength. So a couple of examples give 15% more strength than the control formulation does. So we're getting more value out of that formulation than we are with other formulations. So if we take these examples and then try to apply that same formulation to the other blues in the other phthalo blues, we start to see something different here. So in this example, we're going from one alpha type to another alpha, so the 15.2 to the 15.1 space, and we see similar results for two of the three combinations, dispersant combinations. But in one case, we do see an uptick in the low shear viscosity for the one formulation. Next, if we shift from an alpha to a beta, in this case, it's the 15.2 results to a 15.3. We see one formulation that does carry over in its response, but the two others were much higher in viscosity than the 15.2 formulation. And then lastly, if we go from an alpha surface treated to a beta surface treated, again, these are both originally designed for a liquid coating type system. we see something again very similar, where one case was had a similar response, but the other two dispersant choices had different ones. And then the next example is in for plastics, where we are taking a look at the finishing impact on a 15.3 for ultimately for a fiber and film application. So we alter the um, the finishing techniques to be able to create what I call the regular plastic grade or the fiber and film grades for the same product. Ultimately, for fiber and film, there's a higher criteria from a filter pressure value, as well as a lower mesh scale in here. So we can see how the changes in the finishing techniques change that filter pressure value significantly. And we see that basically with a surface area differences, in that we create a larger, softer particle that can disperse easier in that particular area. And we see the improvement also in the film note rating as well. So it's always going to be a balance, and this is a slide you always see from me, to be able to select the pigment itself and match it up to your application to ultimately get the blue end product that you're looking for, with the technical properties that you need to be able to get that out to your customers. So next month we will revisit the difference between a high performance and a classical pigment. I'll go back to be able to bring you more important information, more up-to-date information at that, and so that will be at the end of August. Again, always the last Tuesday of the month. In September, we're going to take the month off as we head out to both the CTT Summit in Chicago and RETEC in Cleveland. So we hope to see you there. Oops. So again, I appreciate you coming and giving us your time for this webinar, and I'd like to open it up for any questions that you might have.